Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 29th episode of By the Drip. This podcast is all about coffee, entrepreneurship, and the amazing people we meet through the story of coffee. And today, I have a chat with none other than my brother, Cole Torode. Cole announced a few weeks ago they would be closing down Forward Coffee, and we talked through the highs and lows of starting a green importing business. It was super interesting for me to listen to Cole talk about a few different topics, such as direct trade and how it's a complex topic and his take on it. We talk about the impact of cash flow, and Cole discusses his relationships he's built over the years. And in the end, Cole expresses his gratitude and support in what's going on next for him. So check out our episode 29 with Cole Torode. Cole, welcome back.
Dave, hey man.
Hey, time to wake up, man. It's early here in Japan.
It's early here in Japan, but we got lots to talk about.
Thought we could do a quick podcast. You announced some news last week, or a few weeks ago, I guess, at this point, and thought it would be nice that you could kind of share the news and a bit of the journey and what's been going on. So the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. So maybe 3 weeks, close to a month ago, I made an announcement that we've decided to close one of our businesses, at least for the time being. Sort of the language there was to cease operations in Forward. So our specialty green importer and coffee trading business. And I suppose the brief overview on that is we hit the 5-year anniversary. So the end of September was 5 years celebrating the business, which, is a great milestone for any business. I don't know the statistics on how many businesses make it to 5 years. Maybe you know that number off the cuff. Maybe you don't.
I don't know 5, but 1 year it's like 90% close. So to make 5 years statistically is
low.
Yeah.
Not here to brag about the milestone or anything like that. So we don't have to dive into the statistics. Just proud to hit the 5-year mark. And then wanted to just kind of talk about why. I think Forward always acted in a sense of transparency and having a conversation and just being kind of vocal and open with what happened, why I sort of made the decision, sort of next steps, that sort of stuff it's why we're gathered here today, Dave.
Nice. Well, why don't we start with some of the positives? Let's because there's quite a few achievements that Forward had, and why don't you run us through a few of those, and then why don't we talk about the challenges after?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe I'll run a quick timeline. So we started in September 2019, and I'll say we through all of this because although I was kind of the sole operator, sole figurehead, it was a we thing. Forward started in September 2019, and at the time, the business model was written in a way that was really wanting to take other roasters, other coffee buyers closer to coffee. And we wanted to facilitate trips, introduce them to our acquaintances, friends, people that we were buying coffee from, and sort of open their eyes to what coffee truly is. And I think a lot of that comes with being on a farm, especially for two kids like us from Canada that are, very disconnected from coffee production. I think our biggest realizations came from being on the ground, boots on the ground, and understanding how does coffee actually work. That those elements really pushed us, to continue the journey. And so at first, the business model was written very much in the sense of let's help other people get there and get their boots on the ground and put some mud in their boots and sort of see what it is that's going on a coffee farm. How do the flavors show up? What are the distinct elements that contribute to flavors we see in the cup, to price points, to value, to all of those sort of things. So it was maybe 2 years in the making before we launched in 2019, and then early 2020. We don't need to dive into the history books of what happened in 2020. We all kind of know the world shut down, and we just had to pivot and figure out what to do. So ideally, not the right time to start a business. Hindsight is 2020. If we knew, maybe we wouldn't have. However, we pivoted, and I believe that the pivot led to some of the most beneficial relationships and opportunities for Forward at the time. Well, no, that's not true. I was going to say never did we actually facilitate an origin trip. We never did one formally where we were sending out an itinerary. We're going to do 5 days, 8 days, 10 days in XYZ. That never came to fruition, but there were many times that we traveled with other people, and I organized the different stops and facilitated who we're going to go visit and that sort of thing. But it was more off the cuff and more I was on the trip, and somebody just so happened to also sort of be there, and sort of we joined hands and went frolicking through the meadows. We didn't frolic through any meadows. I was just seeing if you were actually listening to me, Dave.
I'm still here, man. I'm still here. Don't worry. It may be early, but I'm still here.
Do you want me to keep rolling? Do you have any questions or thoughts on anything I've mentioned so far?
No, I think why did you see the need to start Forward?
Yeah, I don't know if it was ever a need. I think it was more of a want, and it was a want based on a passion and an opportunity. That the passion had already been unlocked and was already growing. We'd been traveling since 2015 to buy all of our coffee for ROSSO Coffee, our roasting brand that still exists today, and that you founded in 2007. I joined in 2010. So that pathway, that system, we were already exploring. We were doing everything that we bought through ROSSO in a manner that the industry knows as direct trade, and we can maybe talk about what that means, because it means a little and it means a lot depending on who you're talking to, and how they utilize the power of that term. And I think just in doing that and being open and sharing on social media and sharing in our marketing and sharing in different ways, people started to reach out. Other roasters in Canada is really who was reaching out at this point and saying, hey, this is super cool. You're in whichever country. You're in Costa Rica, you're in Rwanda, you're in Myanmar, you're in Colombia, Guatemala. Could you maybe find something for me? I'm looking for 2 bags. I'm looking for 5 bags. Looking for a Christmas offering. I'm looking for, and then we just started hearing those requests more and more often. And I think I don't honestly remember the first time we had the conversation, you, me, and Jesse, about Forward or at that time Green Coffee Co. is how we would reference it, because we didn't know the branding. There was enough times that people asked the question, can we seek something out? And finally we went, 1, there's an opportunity here. 2, this is something we're interested in. 3, we're entrepreneurial, spirited people. Is this a little side quest that we can put into our
side quest?
The side quest we can put into our scope and proceed to create something out of some new opportunity for ourselves, some new opportunity possibly for the people that are around us and our team, and could we all kind of grow together in this business and in the industry?
Yeah, I think at the start we also started to see, roasting became much cheaper. Like buying a sample roaster, buying a small, 1 kilo roaster over the last, 10 years has been cheaper and cheaper. And so the rise of like small cafes starting to roast also, I think, pushed you in that direction, because they used to buy a roasted coffee and now they're looking for green coffee because they started roasting. And so you kind
Right.
of tried to fill that niche as well.
Yeah, we were always, it felt we were always a few steps ahead of where the rest of the market demand was. Like in 2015, I remember trying to source coffee was felt archaic. It was very hard. There were few sources. We were choosing, do we want to have the same thing on our menu as those people, or do we want to have the same thing on our menu as those people? Like the options were incredibly limited, that we took matters kind of into our own hands and tried to figure out the pathways to source our own offerings, and never kind of looked back, right?
So we got the reason why you've opened. So
Yeah.
let's go back. October 3rd, 2019 is your first order. Do you remember who ordered, or the size or the amount, and how excited you were for the first order to come across the?
Yeah, I do actually. I do. Huge order, life-changing order.
Okay.
So
It was me for
for
$54, right?
yeah, using my credit card. No kidding. Uh, I'm still paying that one off, man.
I know. Sorry, man.
So October 3rd, 2019, we are in Toronto. We're doing maybe the AeroPress. We're there in Toronto for the National AeroPress Championship or something like that. And I had brought an Akawa and I had brought some green coffee, and I think I had just put the website up online maybe a week before, like September 30th, I think is when it formally went up and went public. And part of the model was also, and we can talk about this a little later on. I will answer your question this time. I dodged your question last time, and
That's okay.
I'll
That's
acknowledge
okay.
that. So the website went public. Part of the model was to make coffee more accessible on just an e-commerce platform and be more transparent about it, and kind of break down the barriers on how we buy coffee, and try to make volumes more tangible. So we were doing 1 kilo coffees. And the very first coffee order came from an event that I did in Toronto following the AeroPress Championship. I was at is it 135 Ossington? I think it's called 135 Ossington. It's a little cafe on Ossington. Two friends run it at the time, and they're kind enough to let me kind of take over the bar. I think this is my first sort of bar takeover ever. And I've gotten a kawa, I've got some green coffee. I'm thinking, dude, this is so cool. I'm roasting green coffee in the window over here. I'm, selling it right off the Akawa. I've got some stuff I've roasted before coming here, and I'm brewing it on espresso or filter. And somebody came in from Toronto, tried one of the coffees, went, "Oh man, this is so good!" And it was a black honey geisha from Costa Rica. They bought 2 kilos of it. I booked the order through the website, and then I had to go home and fulfill the order like 3-4 days later. Whenever I got back to Calgary, I had to pack the 2 kilos down into 1 kilo increments,
I
and
love
this
this.
time it's basically just like a random aluminum foil bag, and I'm handwriting what the farm information is on the bag, and that was the first order. So maybe, I don't know, $100, like maybe a little bit more than $100 order. And then the first real order, the first like business order was to Little Victories Coffee in Ottawa. They were also there in Toronto that week, if I recall, and we just had a great conversation. And Andy, who's a good buddy today, still, he said, "Hey, love what you're doing, man. How can I support?" And he bought, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 bags of coffee, which at the time I was like, wow, man,
Unreal.
this is rolling. Let's go. And then that might have been the only order between then and 2019 closing.
Hand-to-hand combat, as we always say, out there in the field, selling, knocking on doors.
That's right.
Making sure people are understanding what's going on. I love that. The beginning of entrepreneurship and every business is always just so fascinating to listen to and watch and remember how it all started.
And the little details that you forget about as you run down the path and you start reflecting back, and you're like, geez, those months were tough. It was really hard, because another challenge that we faced at the beginning, and realistically all the way through, is I've spent my coffee career as a roaster, right? As a person behind a roasting brand. I've been working with Rosso for, at this point, 10 years. And all of a sudden I'm phoning roasters who think that we're competing against one another, Rosso versus, the world of roasters. I'm starting to phone roasters and say, hey, can I sell you inventory? And they're thinking, what'd you do? You overbuy? Like you got old stuff you're trying to flock out to me? Like, what's your angle, dude? And at the beginning, it was an absolute grind to convince people that I was doing this in the best interest of the community, not in the best interest of selling you the worst possible product so that our roasting business could, therefore be seen as better than yours or something like that. And it took a really long time. If that was ever achieved to break out of, it took a really long time. And I think there's some roasters that, as of 2 months ago, would still not buy from Forward, knowing there was any sort of draw or affiliation to Rosso, even though I hadn't been hands-on or operating really in any capacity for however long that's been.
Yeah, it was kind of too bad that was a sticking point for some roasters, because the businesses were completely separate, and you operated, kind of at arm's length. And our industry is funny that way, that sometimes people are more worried about the ties than the actual product, or how it looks, than the actual product. But
yeah,
that's okay. We live and learn, right?
We live and we learn. And we don't need to sell to everybody also. That's something, if there's a business tidbit to take out of this, you don't need everybody to be your client. Just focus on those that support you, and you should be able to make it work to the best of your ability and the best of theirs.
I agree. Okay, let's run through some numbers. You kind of got some cool numbers here. You kind of took the philosophy of maybe not building completely in public, but you had quite a bit of transparency on the website, and in your email that you sent out, there was, you showed your revenue and how many orders you've had over the years, how many countries. So why don't you run us through some of those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So I've always had a challenge in the coffee industry that I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think a lot of people say they're doing something and then they do something else. And I think transparency, when starting Forward, I thought transparency was the end all be all solution to eliminating the smoke and the mirrors.
Can you Can you give me a couple examples of smoke and mirrors? I'm a listener and I don't quite know.
Yeah.
I don't quite know,
So
man. Tell me, walk me
smoke and
through.
mirrors. Smoke and mirrors would be in the context of our business. Smoke and mirrors would be something like direct trade. I think direct trade is today marketing jargon. It's something people list on their bags and they say, we're buying this direct trade. What direct trade translates to or once meant in the industry is, in the example that Dave, you're the coffee producer, I'm the buyer. Direct trade would be I buy from you. I don't buy from Billy or Sally or Susie that sits in between us that facilitates the financials, the logistics, you name it. I buy from you. And what benefit gets out of that is, one, I know when I spend $1, and we can only spend $1 once, right? When I spend $1, I know how that dollar, who's receiving the dollar. And in conversation with you, I understand what that dollar means to your business because you're telling me that, okay, your cost of operations are X, your product you think is worth Y. Therefore, in order for your business to operate, you need to sell it at this price point. I agree, I don't agree, whatever that conversation looks like. And then I pay you accordingly. But in order for your financial model to work, I can't pay this person in between us to then take a percentage off of that to pay you because you're no longer going to fetch the same amount that you just told me you need to make the business work. And so direct trade is essentially money from my hand or Forward's bank account goes directly to the bank account of the person that we are purchasing from. And I'm gonna, pull the rug on this one.
No,
You don't want me to?
no, I want you to.
Okay, well, the coffee industry's got some skeletons in the closet, and almost nobody in our industry is buying direct. And that even applies to us. And I'm willing to throw myself under the bus as I say this, because it's really hard to buy direct. Because realistically, a lot of coffee farms are not equipped to do that sort of business. If you're a small regional farm and if you're a roaster that has regional coffees on your menu, you're not buying direct. You're buying from a cooperative, you're buying from an exporter, you're buying from an importer, you're buying from some facilitator business that sits in between point A and whatever point that you might be. You're not point B. You're point C, D, E, F, G, so on and so forth. And the further into the alphabet you are on the points here, the more touch points there are, the less direct you are and the less value that gets to the hands of the producer. And our industry is full of the dialogue, how do we get more money to the producer? Well, the way to get more money to the producer is you cut out all these intermediary steps and you do a lot more work on your side as the roaster, as the importer, whatever role you're in there, to facilitate and do that trade. So I believe that it's the most sustainable pathway to the future is direct trade. But it's also the most difficult, challenging financial burden to the future because now we need to finance every purchase out of our own pocket. And we need to figure out logistics. We need to figure out all of these little details to move product from their farm, their warehouse to us. And in a lot of countries, that's actually not legal. In a lot of countries, you need to work with an exporting body. You need to work with some other facilitator in order to make it work. So it's a short but also long-winded way of talking about direct trade. It's marketing jargon. It's not a reality in the industry, and most people are using that as a term to convince clients that their coffee is better than the next company's. And in
Yeah,
reality,
yeah, I think yeah, it's a tough slogan that we've created. And at one point, a long time ago, it
yeah,
meant buying coffee from maybe not even directly from the farmer. It just meant I deal with the farmer and I go see the farmer. And now it's kind of this hodgepodge of different meanings to different people. And I think it's while buying coffee, for whatever reason, it sits at the highest point on the hierarchy of like, I'm buying the purest, best or most ethical, et cetera, assigned to it, even though no one assigns those but the buyer themselves, those meanings and jargon.
right.
And so it's kind of, it's definitely lost its shine over the years and means, very little now. And I don't know how do we replace it or what we replace it with. I don't think there's like a clear answer going forward, but
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I don't think there's a clear answer going forward either. What I would suggest if you're a roaster listening to this is lean into your importer, whoever you're buying coffee from. Lean into them and work closer with them and better understand how their business works. And the whole direct thing doesn't matter. It's it's fine. We have a supply chain, we have downstream, we have upstream, we have big macroeconomic words that we can use to describe how our industry flows. And it's okay that you're not going straight to the raw material and figuring out every step in between. That does not take value away from what you're doing in your field. Worry about your four walls, what's happening in your business, and work closer with the people that can support you in getting product that you can then turn into the best opportunity for uh, going into your market and selling in your market or whatever you're doing in your space.
I think it's they need to add value to the roaster or they need to add value to the producer. I think that's
Yeah,
the I think we kind of had backlash for a while in the industry to importers and exporters because there was a point in time that they were extracting value from producers and not adding
right.
enough value and taking too much of a percentage off the top into their pocket. And so I think as things change, people need to find out how much is going directly to the producer, and then what value add is this exporter providing or an importer providing to you or to the producer that allows you to work with them and see that you're able to see all the steps and what's going on through coffee's confusing and there's a lot of moving parts, so have someone
Yeah,
on your side that you're working with to you know provide that information, logistics, et cetera.
yeah. I think on top of that too, and we're again pushing from your question of talking about the highlights of forward through the timeline, but just quickly on top of that, going direct and traveling to origin is not meant to be a vacation. It's meant to be an education, if anything, and an eye-opening experience of realization that you should better appreciate coffee. It's not just coffee. There's so much more that goes into a cup of coffee, and an origin trip is something that can really open your eyes to that. But the number of we've been doing it for 10 years where we're traveling to origin, and the reason that we find the value in traveling and going is, one, you get to know the people you're working with, and personally I'm a huge fan of that. I'd rather work with people that I know personally, that I can sit down and have a meal with comfortably, that I can pick up a phone and call and say, hey, what's going on, how are things, this event just happened, how does that affect you, and have that sort of relationship. But then there's also the benefit that you can taste more coffee while you're down there. You get a wider spectrum. You don't have to rely on them sending you samples and a limited scope of what's available. And you just get to spend time with them. And through that, you and I have some amazing friends in all sorts of coffee producing regions around the world, and uh, have never felt the mi casa su casa line in such truth. But then in having these friends, we learn that a lot of buyers or people coming down to do direct trade sort of models end up coming down. They tell the producer what to do. Hey, can you run this experiment? Can you run that experiment? Can you try this thing? And then that experiment happens, and maybe it's not very good, or maybe it is good, but they don't end up buying it. They just leave them high and dry in a lot of cases. So they end up being a deterrent to being able to conduct business. And the number of times we've heard that happen is astonishing. It's not okay. And then the number of times that we've heard that these people are going, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be just raw here, but these people are going to this country and it's a party. They're out every night partying. They're asking, hey, where can we get strippers, or that sort of stuff. And yeah, man, the number of those stories that I've heard from important people in our industry is staggering. I think a lot of people that do what we call direct trade are really going on an opportunity to leave the office, to get out of the roastery, to go on a pseudo vacation, and then they're not doing it for the benefit of the industry. They're doing it for self-interest and yeah. Anyway, I think the industry needs a bit of a shakeup in terms of that being the end all be all. I think there's better ways to get value to places that we believe need more value derivative from a cup of coffee. And I would say work closer with your importer, work closer with the next person in the supply chain, and better understand upstream, downstream, what that means, and how you can benefit the people within your realm, within your bubble. Everybody's bubble is going to be a different size.
All right. Other than that terrible point about people.
It's terrible, man. I've heard that story so many times from. Anyway, yeah. Let's talk about some achievements through Forward, shall we?
Love it, man.
I've only dodged your question for 26 minutes now.
2, maybe 3 dodges, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Just with some numbers, big guy.
Yeah, sure. So Forward was in business for 5 years, and in reality, the first 2 and the last 1 were very hard. The third and fourth were the best of the years, let's say. In terms of revenue, those were also maybe the toughest of the years for me personally. Every year was tough. Different challenges, different global market effects, different events happening that led to long days, weeks, etc. Through the course of Forward's lifetime, we achieved a little more than $3 million in revenue. I think maybe upon closing, about $3.1 million in revenue. We had over 2,800 orders to a client list of over 750 people. 750 unique clients is the way I should say that. We sourced from 16 different countries around the world. I believe we traveled to 13 of them. Every country that we traveled to, we purchased from. Every farm that we visited and took time away from, we purchased from. It's another important thing that I'd like to underline.
Oh, we can unpack that one too.
Yeah, we don't visit farms just to waste their day, to run away and never talk to them again. We shipped Coffee. This is one that I'm personally really proud of. One of the goals of opening Forward was to make coffee more accessible, kind of the higher end, more boutique style of coffee that people label as competition coffee, which I think is also marketing jargon that we can also unpack if you'd like to unpack what competition coffee means. I'm not a competitive coffee maker, so I can't touch that coffee. I'll just kind of foreshadow that. So accessible to the masses. We shipped to 28 different countries around the world, which I'm super proud of. That lands in every continent but Antarctica. You know, nobody from Antarctica ever reached out. Is Antarctica even real? We had 13 different seasons of the Forward Lottery. So the lottery is a friendly roasting competition that we came up with as it's a marketing opportunity is really what that was. It was a way to get Forward into the hands of roasters and create a value path for education and an opportunity for them to market their brand through the success of this program, and then also get some education through it. I'll do a 2-minute on the lottery. So tickets were always the same price. The ticket was 1 kilogram of coffee. Every season we decided on a different coffee. If you were a roaster, you could purchase to participate, and it was a fixed minimum quantity, a fixed maximum quantity that you could buy, and you would receive a box that has coffee that is coded. You don't know where it's from, what it is, what process it is, what variety it is, all that sort of stuff. And you would have to use your skill or luck. It could be both. You would have to use your senses, let's say, is a different way to frame that, to roast the coffee. I give you a criteria of, timelines and water spec and build and that sort of stuff. So, our evaluation platform. And then you get an empty bag with a label on it. You get a scratch card. This is the lottery part. You get a scratch card that you would scratch off and reveal a number, and that number is now your number. You ship the coffee back to us. We evaluate. Sometimes I think the first season was 6 or 7 roasts. I think 7 roasts. I think our biggest evaluation was the 10th season. We had maybe 58, 60, wow. Maybe 58. And we evaluate all the roasts. We being myself and 3 judges. It was always 3 judges. My scores counted a few seasons. We would have a judge drop out, and otherwise I didn't want my scores to participate. So there was no potential appearance of bias. And we would bring it down to the top 10. There would be a finals table. Those would get evaluated a second time, and then top 5 would be announced and would win prizes. And it kind of felt like a game show where we're, announcing through social media, these are the top 5, but we don't know who we're announcing. We're announcing numbers, and we're waiting for people to get their numbers back to us. And then those people are winning either tickets to the next season, they're winning credit to Forward. There's trophies. The first place would get a trophy. So there's 13 trophies that would exist somewhere around the world. And I think the biggest value add, or the biggest value derivative here, was we would take a whole bunch of data from the evaluation, and we would put it on a spreadsheet, and we would put every coffee on the spreadsheet. And then we would go to color track. We would take internal, external color. We would go to density. We would go to moisture. We would take all the analytical points that we could, compile that into one sheet, and make that public. And so, Dave, you could look and see, shit, my number is not in the top 10. I got eliminated in the first round. I rank out whatever, middle of the pack, doesn't really matter, but this is how my data reads versus others. Oh, wow, I developed my coffee way darker, way lighter. It's internal to external. I have a huge gap. It's all that sort of stuff that you could kind of take out in tangible data. It's okay, man. You don't have to cry. I know it was a really nice program.
I'm getting emotional here. It's a little too early. Getting emotional.
So we ran 13 seasons of the lottery, which I'm pretty proud of. We did 3, 4, 5 maybe evaluations in different cities, 2 of those in different countries. And for the most part, had new judges in just about every season. There was some overlap. It became challenging finding new faces that weren't participating. But big shout out to everybody who supported the lottery, both as judges, producers, or participants.
It was super cool. I don't know if you said it at the very start, but everyone would get the same green coffee. And so I never technically judged it, but I'd come in and taste a little bit here and there. And it was really neat to see the different expressions of one coffee roasted, 25 different ways.
Right.
And how close people were to each other, or how far off some of the roasts would be. And I think it's super neat competition, something really good, valuable for the industry. And hopefully we'll see a new form of that maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future. Something else interesting. I would submit a coffee. I would stop to roast the coffee, and
you never did well, eh?
I never did well, man. And the worst part is I knew what the coffee was. I was the only one. I was, in theory, the only one in the competition that knew what the coffee was.
You couldn't even cook the books, eh?
Couldn't even cook the books. It doesn't need to get on an airplane. It's staying in the facility.
You have all the advantages, and you can't even get ahead. What was the highest you ever ranked? Like 6th or something?
I never even made the final table. I wouldn't put hours of my time into it. I would use my sample roast profile that was, I'd try to evaluate fixed variables that we had. I wasn't sitting there tinkering around trying to go crazy, but it became a great education pathway for myself to better understand how my perspective or our perspective of roasting kind of falls into the group here. So it was a really cool program. I enjoyed it. Would love to see something of the sort come back. I've seen roasting competitions. There's one happening this week in Japan. While we're at the SCAJ, there is a roasting competition that reads similar, not the same. It's a little more true as to the origin and some of the details, but I think it's awesome to see more of these kind of privately held competitions. Is that the way you would frame that? One-off competitions forming around the world. There's a ton of great examples of that happening, and this is one of them that will go into a bit of a hibernation and will maybe come back in future seasons.
Sweet. Love the lottery. Cool idea, and lots of getting info. Is if someone's listening, is there a place that they can go and find all that past data?
At the moment, no, because we've stripped back most of Forward's website. So it should mostly be a landing page. But if there is somebody listening, if you want to see the data, maybe just throw a comment down below, and I can dig through the archives. I'll have to go down into the basement, into the dungeon, and see if I can find the forms. No, I'm kidding. They're on Google Drive somewhere, so it's not really that challenging. But I won't do the work unless somebody asks me to do the work, and then in the future I'll put those up on a more easy to see public domain.
So let's switch here. Let's talk about some of the challenges the business had. We've kind of rolled through some different things here, but what was
right?
It was one or two of the biggest challenges, and then ultimately, we got another 20 minutes or so. Ultimately, let's get to why the decision.
Sure. Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges is cash.
Cash is king.
Cash is king. Cash flow is King Kong.
Man, what a great line.
What a great line. It's not my line, but I appreciate the person who first shared it with us.
Yeah, we do.
We do. Cash is a challenge. I mean, for us to fill a container of coffee, you can put 20,000 kilograms of coffee into a container. Ideally, if we're shipping a container, we should fill the container for maximum efficiency. To put 20,000 kilograms into a container at today's market price, today's C market price is, I don't know, close to $3 a pound, let's say. So $6 a kilo, $7 a kilo, that's $140,000 to fill a container at today's market price. That's in theory, the lowest price point you can achieve for a volume coffee today. That's also a commodity coffee. If you're buying off a C market, you are buying commodity coffee. That's not a specialty coffee. That's a large volume conventional product. You are buying a commodity. Underline that a couple more times. So to move a container, it's incredibly expensive, and prices have gone up within the last couple of years. But when we were starting, specialty volume coffees from larger scale farms might have been in the sort of $3 starting per pound to maybe $4 or $5, depending on what we're looking at. And then generally speaking, Forward would never fill a container just with volume coffee. We would also have micro lots and ideally some nano lot type of stuff. We would try to purchase from the whole sort of value pyramid. Every farm, if you look at the pyramid, has the top of the iceberg with a tiny little bit of coffee. And this tiny little bit of coffee is what most roasters want to buy. They want to advertise that I'm buying Dave's, Finca Dave. I'm buying the best coffee from Finca Dave. And then most people aren't wanting to go into this middle category because they can't derive the value from that sort of in-between price point. People don't necessarily see or justify that in-between price point. That was always the most challenging bracket for Forward to sell. And then they might jump into the low price point if they need a volume coffee or sort of blender, as we call it in the industry, to justify more volume from a sole entity or sole producer.
So if I'm hang on, I'm a roaster. Mm-hmm. You're saying that low tier coffee is going into my espresso blend because that needs to be the highest margin for the cafe or the roastery. And then
it would go into the house blend or house offering, whatever that might be.
Okay. And then higher up the tier becomes more difficult for a roaster because I'm paying more to you, or you're paying more to me actually, because it's Finca Dave.
Finca Dave.
Yeah. Why has no one come up with that? That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, man.
I lost my train of thought. I had no idea where I was going.
The higher tier.
Dave.
Yeah,
the higher tier. Yes. At Finca Dave, there's only higher tier.
Yeah. At Finca Dave, there's not only higher tier. At no farm in the world is there only higher tier. There is no farm that is producing only absolute banger coffees, like big, wild, 90 plus point coffees. Every farm.
No. Finca Dave only produces 95 plus. Not even.
You know what? You get me some samples from Finca Dave. You give me one sample from Finca Dave.
No problem, man.
We'll talk.
Production's down, but we'll get you some.
Every farm is producing majority of their coffee down here. The difference is the down here is going to be at a different level depending on what the farm is and how they produce coffee. The whole pyramid.
And down here, I'm listening. So down here means the lower tier. Lower score, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, every farm is selling coffee locally,
Mm-hmm.
because they would have stuff that they're sorting out that, underripes that got harvested, or broken beans, or something that's getting sorted out in the dry mill. They've got early harvest, they've got late harvest. They have to pull these cherries off the tree, and maybe the quality levels are much different. So they're selling locally. Every farm should be selling something locally and not exporting that product. I think the best sort of sustainable, and I think the word sustainable is another tough one in our industry that's often used as smoke and mirrors, but the most sustainable pathway for the economics of a farm is we figure out how to buy from each point in the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, same as a roasting business that we just talked about, the blender or the house or whatever that category is the bottom of our pyramid. That's going to be the volume driver that's going to keep the lights on in our business. It's going to pay the bills. It's going to pay our salaries. And then anything above that is going to be kind of the more premium, maybe the single origins or the middle category. And then maybe above that single origin category, we've got the gold series, the limited release series. We'll use our own language from our own roasting business. And then, we sell the lowest volume of the stuff at the top. It's in a percentage basis, it's going to be the lowest margin, because we're not going to do the multiplier the same way. And we sell the most volume of the stuff at the bottom. And the bottom always sounds negative, and I'm not trying to frame it as negative. This is a very important part of our industry. This is our industry. The bulk of stuff is sold at that sort of bottom rung, and we need to support that as an industry. And a lot of people think that when we see these top prices in the world, that these farms are selling all their coffee for this price. It's like, no, they're getting the peak of their pyramid to a higher point. And what that is ultimately doing for them in future seasons is lifting the bottom of the pyramid. Yeah.
We saw that at Fink and Dave.
Yeah, we saw that at Fink and Dave, to the point that everything's in the top now.
No, the very top drives the bottom and raises the bar on that, because the farm brand, increases awareness.
Yeah.
You can take that money and deploy it back into the business to raise the quality all across the business. So in a farm at Fink and Dave, we've installed new drying beds. We've hired more people. We're able to select picked and, have better cherries all throughout, every day, instead of it was just me doing all of that before. So that's what goes on. And I know you got into a argument online about some of that people could go check out.
Yeah, I don't think it was an argument. I think there's a challenge in our industry where we smother ourselves by saying that coffee shouldn't cost more than it's $5 a cup, is what I was challenging people. And I think that's nonsense. At $5 a cup, if we don't think that coffee can break out of a certain price point, then we don't believe coffee is anything but a commodity. The commodity is defined as something that is in a fixed price point dictated by the market. Specialty falls into a free market, because there's global interest in paying the prices that you think as a buyer makes sense for you and your market. That is a free market economy. I should be able to say, I want this coffee at $10,000 a kilo because I can sell it and it's worth it. And I don't know, these large scale traders coming in and saying, oh, coffee's got to be $5 a cup. But hey, we need healthcare, and hey, we need social insurance, and hey, we need to protect the farms, and we need to get more value to the farms. And then they're buying as point H, F, X, like they're so far removed from what happens on the farm, but they preach this sort of saviorism type of narrative and this sort of wokeness, but then they're the absolute opposite in terms of their actions. And it's just, That sort of thing drives me nuts. That's a different episode. That's a different conversation. We
we're
don't have to go down.
we're
We don't
going
have to go down that line.
we're going sideways here.
So let's talk about transparency. Transparency is another thing that Forward strived for. You can see just as I talk here, I'm pretty open to throwing stuff around that happens in the industry that bothers me. That's an act of transparency. Transparency is both a blessing and a curse, I believe, in our industry. The curse is I end up telling these stories that maybe I shouldn't. No, I'm kidding. The curse in the lens of Forward, transparency was a blessing because I opened the door to show people how the business works, top to bottom. I would have phone calls with roasters and tell them exactly what I'm doing. And I would tell them how I'm buying, and I would tell them my challenges, and I would tell them my the wins, the losses, the challenges, the opportunities. I would share all of that with any roaster that was asking. I wasn't, knocking on doors and deciding to share it, but if they're asking the question, I'm happy to share it. With that, I would share pricing. I would say that, we bought this coffee at X price point. That was actually listed on the product listing on the web page when you went to purchase the coffee. So you could see what our margin would be on any product online. And that's a blessing because in a lot of ways it made business easier because I didn't need to dance around on certain things. Everything was a fixed formula for me to mark up, and I could decide. And that was also posted online. I could decide quite quickly whether or not it made sense for the business. The curse, the curse side of it.
And sorry, before you go on, because other importers might have, I'm client A or A category client. I might have special pricing, and there might be
You do.
Okay. I have special pricing, and then category B, I have different pricing. And then if you're a small time roaster, you're category C, and you're paying full tilt, and there's no special pricing. Okay.
Yes, and then further on top of that, your pricing is only your pricing until the end of this week. Please make your purchase because the market is an open market. It's trading. The market is moving, and we're not willing to sell to you for something that we quoted this week when market is up next week because we can, gouge somebody next week. Tough word.
Not a think of Dave.
Not a think of Dave, man. We're
only the top tier, 95 plus, baby.
So on the transparency, before I get into the curse, something that was also really interesting is there were farms that didn't want to work with me because I was going to show the price. And then I'm also selling to an international market. And they don't want the Canadian price to be shown to the international market. Because in some cases
they have special pricing.
They have special pricing going to whichever market around the world. And in some cases, I could get the product to them for cheaper than was advertised or offered through the farm itself by shipping to Canada and then shipping. So, transparency, I think, is a blessing in that sense that it opened my eyes to the fact that it's not a one size fits all formula for around the world trade. I think there was also a blessing that a lot of roasters started to maybe open their doors to more transparency as well in their model. And there's many that I admire that I got the opportunity to work with bits and pieces here and there that are very open to how their businesses work and are very open to sharing that they paid whatever, $25 for this coffee at whatever volume it is. And that is therefore why a retail bag is priced at X, and their end consumer could make an educated decision saying, this coffee is more expensive, but they're also saying they paid more for it and it's 5X, 10X what the market says. Yeah, I'll try that. And that in my mind is beneficial because they create that thought process for the end consumer, where if we don't ever share anything about pricing, nobody ever knows what the price of raw coffee costs. It's stuck in a commodity bubble, right? Just like rice or wheat or any of that stuff. If I don't know the price of grain by metric ton, which I don't, how do I know what a loaf of bread is worth? But if there's a specialty artisan bakery that's got 5 different loaves of bread that they offer, and one's an ancient grain and one is this type of grain, and one, you can all of a sudden start to see there's different value in different types of grain. And if you can educate the client to better understand that, we can start to make our own decisions as consumers on, okay, I like this type best, and I'm willing to pay a 20% premium over the other one. So I think transparency is a blessing in the industry if used correctly. Where it became a curse for Forward is in the final kind of year, maybe year and a half. Forward became a little bit like the Yellow Pages.
The Yellow Pages.
The Yellow Pages. Yeah,
what are the Yellow Pages?
Kicking this back old school. So the Yellow Pages are like a phone directory that would be in a local, I believe every city in North America at least had the Yellow Pages. So it would be like a local directory that if you need a plumber, you go to the plumber section and you find, your different plumber options.
No, it's like it was like a thick physical book. And
yeah.
they would hang, well, you would get them sent to your house, and then you would look up, you would look
the
up
computer
plumbers.
Store, you'd look up plumbers, you'd look up different
but everyone's name was in there who lived in the city, and you could also look up and find so you could look up Cole Torode and find your phone number and your address. And then I think you had to pay extra to not be listed.
Yeah, right. I don't know if the address is in there. Phone number for sure. But it was the directory, right? It was the directory for finding business or friends or contact information within the city. So Forward felt like it was becoming the Yellow Pages because what I saw was traffic on the website would go up. You can follow click maps, heat maps on the website, so you could see that people were going to many different products. And we've got a full breakdown, full write-up of coffee products on the website with processing details, farm details, anything else, tasting notes. And then we're not seeing transactions. We're not seeing conversions. And then we're seeing the write-up on other roasters' websites that haven't purchased through our platform. And that started to get me to think, okay, what's going on here? People are using our write-ups. That's fine. Plagiarism is flattery in a lot of ways. But then I realized people were using it as a source to see what Forward is buying, prices we're paying, the lots we like, et cetera, and then they were using it as a way to just go straight into that producer group and ask for the same. And I saw this play out numerous times. I saw that play out numerous times with people that I'd never necessarily worked with, that I would just be doing research, looking for new clients online and find our information already kind of there and listed. But then I also started to see a pattern where I would essentially educate my own clients through the act of transparency to no longer feel they need my service, because I would teach them how to do what I'm doing through these phone calls and through sharing and through the doors open, sort of books open type of philosophy. And next thing I realize is a lot of my clients are now visiting the people that I'm purchasing from, and they're no longer making that purchase through Forward. And then, months later or weeks later, they're phoning me and saying, "Hey, Cole, yeah, I know we haven't talked for a little while. can you help me? I've shipped something. It's stuck at the port. It's stuck at the seaport, airport. I'm having difficulty with customs. What's the harmonized sales code for coffee? Like, can you help me with this or that? And at first it's like, yeah, that's no problem. Like, that's pretty easy work. I've been doing it for a long time now. I got it figured out. And then I started thinking, what am I doing here? Like, I'm literally letting my client walk all the way through the business, and the worst part is it's costing them more in most instances to follow that pathway into their own direct sort of philosophy than it is to just buy it through forward. But the marketing jargon of direct trade leads them to feel they're self-fulfilled by cutting out this so-called middleman of forward. And I had that conversation a handful of times, a good half a dozen times with different clients, and I had the realization of the yellow books, the yellow pages comment as well, half a dozen times. And meanwhile, I'm sitting thinking, man, I've got this inventory that I've paid cash for, and I'm literally holding the bag is a way to say that, both physically and literally. What's going on here?
Mm.
And so in a lot of ways, transparency was my favorite part of this business, but it's also the reason I've decided we're no longer going to operate in this particular model. It's not sustainable. It doesn't work. It doesn't work the way it should. There are ways it can work. There are ways it will work, and I have them currently in my head. I'm thought mapping them, and we'll write them down and take action maybe in 2025 here. Yeah, a lot I just said there to kind of unpack, but
No,
do you have any questions?
it's hard. I think one of the things that you had to kind of fight for is showing your value to these roasters, and I think as time goes on, that kind of gets distorted because we always think, human beings think like, oh, I can do it better, and so you kind of have to remind the clients over and over again of like the value
Right.
you're adding, or on purchasing the coffee, logistically adding financing, all those things help and support. And I think sometimes that got missed, or like clients grew to a certain size that, they wanted to, I guess, move on, or yeah, it was a bit of a challenge. So
Yeah, which is great. I'm happy with that. If somebody's getting to a certain size that they want to start to figure things out themselves and go through that, absolutely. It's the ones that I guess used everything as a sounding board or a free education to then take to it themselves, and then I don't know, those are also the ones I have not heard from. Interestingly enough, in
yeah, why don't we
the previous
transition
weeks.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, you make the decision, you're going to close down, you announce it, you kind of have a hard out here in like 10 plus minutes. So let's try to kind of wrap up. But
Yeah.
you make the announcement, and is there some people that reached out and uh, said something, really kind or meaningful to you that you don't have to say their name or anything, but give them their nod, or
Yeah, I think the announcement was made mid-September, somewhere 10 to 15 of September. Started with an email to all clients registered on Forward, went to social media, heard from a whole bunch of people, a mixed bag of people that have purchased from the platform before and have been clients through the test of time. Producers, I heard from people that have never bought anything but just had been sitting on the sideline as cheerleaders or admirers. So, the last month, let's say, has been over inundated with phone calls, conversations, and celebrations, let's say. There isn't necessarily any particular one to highlight. I had a lot of people that sort of thanked me for getting them started and sort of gave the nod that they wouldn't be where they are today in business or professionally if not for Forward. There was I'll highlight one here. So there was a winner of the lottery one season who, at the time, she was a home coffee roaster and enthusiast. She won the season of the lottery, and she ended up seeking a job in the industry following that, and she actually put that on her resume and ended up falling into a role as a production roaster or maybe head roaster at a company local to her. And she just sent me this really nice message saying, "Hey, thanks. If it wasn't for you, I would still be kind of wondering what to do, or not for me. If it wasn't for Forward, I would still be wondering what to do. And I found my passion in my career, and the lottery and participation through that has helped me kind of get there, which, for me, gave me kind of the fuzzies and the tinglies and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was kind of neat. There's a handful of nice messages that have come in and sort of celebrated Forward in the last month.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you've had some team members over the last couple of years too. This wasn't a solo operation, so
Yeah.
do you want to give them a little bit of a nod here, shout them out? And
Okay, running in chronological order, we had Marvin and Connor that both got hired in 2022, right around the same window of time. Both awesome guys, both pursuing careers in their own domains. Both were integral members of the team for the time that they were on board. Going into 2023, we hired 3 more team members. We had Grant and George and Yanni. All, again, integral team members. There was nobody that didn't contribute in some way that left an impression on the business. And so we had 5 direct employees of Forward through the course of the 5 years. Yanni is still with me right through till the finish line here, and has been an amazing. Yanni has been an amazing support for quality control, for research and analysis, for data compilations, and for really better understanding coffee. My eyes have been opened to better research and better overall understanding of how coffee works, thanks to Yanni and her support throughout the year and a half, I believe, that she's now been part of the team. So awesome team through the test of time. I think classic entrepreneurship. I wish I hired earlier, but never quite made the decision or could figure it out in the finances to make that make sense, I suppose. But yeah, overall, it's been an incredible journey. 5 years is, a good chunk of my life that's been dedicated to this. It's brought me all around the world. It's opened doors and opportunities, and it's opened literal doors to people's homes. And I have, so many great friendships, relationships, memories, everything that have come through this business. And I'm grateful for every piece, every moment. Obviously, there's some bits in this conversation that don't sound very positive, that sort of shine a negative light on some of the skeletons in the closet of the coffee industry. But it's also important to remember we are a international industry. It is a massive industry, and Forward is a drop in the water that is the ocean. And to be able to participate in the 5 years and get the opportunity to work with a few people that we got to make a small difference in their journey and their pathway is humbling, and I'm grateful for that. And hoping to be back up and running in some capacity in a different form in 2025. So stay tuned to that. If you have any questions or any of that stuff, reach out. Feel free. I am still an open book. Still happy to share. And even if you don't hear me cheering for you on the sidelines, I'm supporting and cheering for you.
Nice, big guy. That was really touching.
Thanks, Dave. Can't wait to try that 95 plus coffee that you've
yeah. So
offered.
I was looking to move a few kilos here from Finca Dave.
Finca Dave. Aren't you one of those virtual reality farms that I've read about?
Yeah. In this beautiful room.
Yeah, beautiful room.
Okay, big guy, we got some baristas to go train. We got a few more days here in Japan for the big competition. So we have this hard out that we've been saying we were going to leave
for a while here.
Yeah. So.
So what am I going to be spending my time doing?
What's the call to action, big guy? What's the call to action here?
So I'm going to be spending my time supporting the team at Rosso, coming back to the roasting business. I'm going to try to do some international development, I'm going to be doing international sales and development of that market to the best of my ability. We're looking to expand the roasting business. We'll talk about that in some future episodes. And coaching and consulting. Dave and I have really enjoyed the role of coaching. It's opened our eyes to different cultures, different ways that people practice, and it's been very eye-opening. So we're going to be doing much more coaching and consulting. We're about 3 weeks into a job here in Japan, and when this episode releases on Thursday, by the time this releases, I believe we will know the results of the Japanese Barista Championship, which we are practicing for. We're training for.
So hopefully we have some good news.
Hopefully we have some good news. I think it will be good news regardless of the news, because it's been a nice journey with these guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, if there's anything in the conversation that's sort of spurred some question marks, feel free to reach out to me on social media. You could throw them in the comments. You could send us an email. There's so many different ways to get a hold of us. Just feel free to reach out. Always here.
Okay, big guy. Appreciate the transparency. It was an honor to be a part of the journey. I think Jesse would say the same thing. We had lots of great memories. The business, especially not last year, but the 2 years before, was really, really doing well. And even near the end, it was still doing well. It's just refocusing here. And
it became different challenges and not necessarily worth the energy cost.
Yeah. But excited to see your journey continue. And let's keep going, man.
Let's keep going. Okay. Thanks, big guy. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay.
Ciao for
3
now.
time. This is the 3rd one, eh?
Pretty cool.